In the mid-2000s, customers were lining up around city blocks, hoisting plastic boxes in the air like trophies. The launches of the Xbox 360, PS3, and Wii generated massive, record-breaking sales and a true cultural frenzy. Underneath those plastic shells sat a massive leap in processing power. Developers went from rendering simple polygons to rendering sweat on a character's brow. Video games had visibly grown out of the toy aisle and into a multi-billion-dollar entertainment juggernaut. Studios wanted their narratives to match this new graphical fidelity. To get that legitimacy, they started opening their checkbooks to Hollywood talent. Electronic Arts recruited John Milius, the legendary screenwriter behind Apocalypse Now, to pen the script for their new first-person shooter, Medal of Honor: European Assault. When the same writers crafting Oscar-winning war epics began drafting game scenarios, the old question of whether the medium could be considered art started to lose its friction. But there was a catch. The medium had evolved into an interactive art form, yet the media assigned to cover these games had absolutely no critical vocabulary to talk about how they actually worked. The job of reviewing games initially fell to legacy print journalists. Writers formally trained to critique movies and books were suddenly handed a controller. They applied a strictly liberal arts approach. A game received high praise if it featured a coherent plot, sharp dialogue, and highly cinematic cutscenes. This method ignored the core feature that separates a game from a movie screen, the interactive mechanics. Critics routinely handed out high scores to titles with compelling stories, even if the actual process of playing them felt like a chore. Judging an interactive medium strictly by its passive elements fails the audience. It completely misses the identity of the art form itself. This blind spot triggered a backlash from a new wave of design-centric writers. They demanded a return to evaluating games strictly by their pure mechanics. To these purists, a game's plot was entirely decorative. The only elements worth analyzing were the structural design and the underlying rules. Look at Medal of Honor again. While the Hollywood script provided the window dressing, the player was actually spending their time solving localized tactical puzzles. The purist critics focused entirely on how players utilized squad commands, managed suppression fire, calculated line of sight, and aimed down iron sights. The historical World War II setting was irrelevant to the gameplay loop. It was just a stylized wrapper for a complex math problem. But the purist approach had its own fatal flaw. By actively ignoring the graphics, the music, and the story, they failed to explain why millions of players were emotionally connecting with the experience. Evaluating a game by cleanly separating its rules from its fiction creates a false binary. The true value of a game emerges at the exact moment those two elements collide. Theorists began describing a magic circle, a conceptual space where the mechanical rules and the narrative fiction successfully trap the player in total immersion. This led to new games journalism, a movement acknowledging that because games are nonlinear, critics have to report on their own subjective experience. No two playthroughs are identical. Then in 2007, a single term emerged that became the standard for modern game theory: ludonarrative dissonance. The concept creates a formal requirement for consistency. It asks a simple question: do the actions you perform with the controller actually make sense with the story being told on screen? Unfortunately, we see this specific discrepancy happen constantly. A relatable, charming everyman protagonist delivers a heartfelt monologue in a cutscene and then proceeds to casually eliminate 300 mercenaries during the actual level. Critics finally had the vocabulary they needed. They could judge a game as a unified experience where the mechanical actions have to match the narrative stakes. These intense online debates forced the industry to mature. Developers and players alike began holding games to a higher standard of cohesive artistic design. Yet the text-based blog era that birthed these theories eventually hit a ceiling. Trying to accurately communicate the kinetic, split-second feeling of interactive gameplay using only written paragraphs is incredibly inefficient. The critical community needed a new tool, and the rise of YouTube provided the exact technological solution. Video platforms allowed critics to display a game's mechanics in real time, matching their on-screen evidence directly to their narrative analysis through voiceover. When this analytical theory finally met a format that could display gameplay directly, the center of gravity in the conversation moved. The static text of the blog era gave way to the video essay. A true appreciation for this medium requires looking past the immediate emotional reaction. It requires understanding the precise mechanical design choices that engineered that feeling in the first place.